You absolutely do, Julius. And when I read through your book, that was incredibly evident, the tools that you do have to share. Talk to us about how somebody starts to build a foundation of resiliency.
Mm, awesome. The first thing for me, which I believe would be very helpful, is to acknowledge the emotions that come with experiencing the adversity. Back when I lost my eyesight, I had overwhelming sadness, anxiety, frustration, anger, blame. And I realized in those moments of silence, I won't be able to make the next step if I'm still carrying these emotions. So the first step, I believe, is to acknowledge the emotions. Because what I've discovered is that most of the time, it's not the adversity that is difficult. It is the emotions that you feel as a result of the adversity that is mainly causing the difficulty. And then the next step, I mean, it's different for everybody. So it really doesn't matter if it takes you a couple of days, a couple of months, even a couple of years. As long as you're in that process of acknowledging what you feel and being able to let it go. And it's a continuous process. It doesn't mean that you've already acknowledged your emotions. Uh, they're not gonna be appearing anymore. It's a continuous process. And what
And
I've discovered after that is just to be able to take responsibility for your life. You may not have chosen to experience that adversity, but it is your responsibility to choose what you're going to do next, to choose the responses, to choose your actions and thoughts.
absolutely. The way that you have really leaned into that responsibility is the difference between somebody who just kind of sits in that solitude and heaviness for the duration of their lives versus somebody who chooses to change the perspective and look at things in a way that allows them to do something beneficial for themselves and everybody else with what they have on their plate in life, essentially.
Totally, yeah. And I love how you mentioned perspective. Um, what I've also discovered is when it comes to perspective, you would be able to like shift the perspective from this particular outlook gradually to a more empowering outlook. And a lot of it can be done by sometimes physically moving to another environment or shifting. If you cannot physically move to another environment, you could choose to like shift the perspective to another identity. So yeah, when it comes to perspective, what I've discovered is that it's super powerful to shift your viewpoint or perspective to somebody who is in a more empowered state, or in a more loving state. For example, when you're experiencing some difficulty, you've already acknowledged the emotions. The next thing that you can do is to um, take some time to shift your perspective and ask empowering questions, such as, what would my best friend say in this situation? Imagine, or you could also imagine, an empowered individual who's already risen, who's already risen up from this adversity. How would they approach this situation? What actions would they take? in order to move past and build resilience and rise above what they're experiencing right now. So I totally love what you mentioned about like perspective.
Thank you. Thank you for expanding on that. And it's true. It's like the idea of if you were really talking poorly to yourself or really putting
Mhm.
yourself down, berating yourself, if you spoke that same way to somebody that you loved, they probably wouldn't want to be around you anymore. They probably wouldn't want to be your
Yeah,
friend anymore.
absolutely.
So it's treating yourself in that same way that you would treat somebody that you love and
Mhm.
uplifting that person, empowering that person so that they may change that perspective on whatever the challenge is before them. I think that's so important.
Totally.
And the way you sat with yourself in your thoughts in that solitude, that is a period of time I have to believe, most of us do that in microscopic doses compared to what you did. But when you're able to do that for a duration of time, really being able to learn how to speak to yourself and listen to yourself, I think is a skill in and of itself that honestly a whole nother book could be written on.
Yeah,
Just
totally.
the ability to truly hear and to uplift yourself, to speak to yourself in a way that allows you to really just intentionally step forward into what your purpose is
Hmm.
very inspiring, Julius. You did
Hmm.
that.
Hmm. Thank you. And I love what you mentioned about like self-talk and being able to speak to yourself and listen
Mm.
because I started with like real the most type the most unpleasant type of conversations with myself. Of course, I was in a point wherein I blamed myself until the silence, the silence, the time alone really helped me. It's like I got tired of being awful, of speaking to myself in a very unpleasant way, of being mean to myself.
Mhm.
It's like, and I realized, as through conversations, the person who should be supporting me the most is me. I mean, I have a wonderful support network, but if I don't start to speak to myself, to acknowledge myself, and to listen to my thoughts and my ideas, my own ideas, I won't be able to get past the adversity. So it's very important to like um, to speak to yourself in an empowering and a kind way, as well as to listen to the thoughts that you have and acknowledge them.
Definitely. And it's the idea that we all have choices. What we
Hmm.
think is within our power. We can either focus on despair and helplessness, or we can
Hmm.
focus on hope and determination.
Yes, yes, it's all about choice.